Deranged Airsoft here, and today I'm going to do kind of a walkthrough of how we did the rail mod on these two upper receivers and getting rid of this built-in flip-up sight. Everywhere we go, we usually take these upper receivers, and everyone always comments on how nice it looks, and they want to know how we got rid of this front sight. And it's a pretty in-depth, and if you're not very good with your hands with being steady, or you're going to be cutting into a lot of the upper receiver and removing material using a Dremel. If you're not real comfortable doing that kind of stuff, this might not be the mod that you want to start, because once you start, you know, you're basically ruining the front, and you're going to have to fix it on your own. So it's a pretty big process, but we'll kind of walk you through how we did it, or how I did it, and how I did it to both of these receivers here. So this is the regular one, the normal one that you see. It has this integrated front flip-up sight. And if you look at the real Remington ACRs or the Bushmaster ACRs now, they have a rail that extends the entire length all the way up to this front part here. So that way it's just a whole rail. They don't have this flip-up. This was kind of more on the original Masada designed by Magpul. So we wanted to do something a little different and make it more of a full front. So when we attach our front sights, like this one here, it matches all the way up to the front here. I scoot it back onto this spot and it works. And it looks really nice. It looks very similar to the Remington ones. So you can see how it kind of looks. Move this one out of the way. But you have that rail. And most of what's holding this in place is all JB Weld. And I let it set up, I let it cure, and then I grind it down to where the rail sits perfect. And it takes some time to do. And then on the inside you can see there's some extra material there. So I'll show you kind of what I did and how to do it. There's probably other ways out there and other methods that other people have done, but pretty much this seems to be the main way that you can do it yourself. Alright? So on your stock rail here, the first thing you're going to want to do is remove this. I'm not going to show you how to do it in this video. We have another one on our page, on our YouTube account, that shows you how to remove this sight. It's very simple, but you'll want to remove it. I'm just going to fold it down for now. So the first thing I did was I marked, and I marked off right here where this rail is. I drew a line right straight across to kind of make this as my last spot. So that was the last rail slot that I had, and then I would marked it so that way I knew where this is my first cut was going to be, and I'm going to cut right straight across it. With this removed, I'm just going to kind of pop this through. Then once I removed it, I kind of looked at the rail line here as it comes across. I'm going to remove this whole section here. From this flat part, I'm going to stay with this line, and I just drew a line right straight back to match up with the line at the bottom of this rail. So that way, and I did that on both sides. So that way I'm removing all of this extra area right here. So that way I have a flat line from here all the way up to the rail. And it's hard to kind of show where it is because I have all this still in here, but I don't want to take it out. So there's a line that goes from here, and then it comes up across the top like that, and then it comes down to this section here, and then up forward to that. So I'm removing that whole chunk of metal. And how did I do it? I used a Dremel and a cutoff wheel. This is where, if you're not very good at this kind of stuff, you may want to just decide on by yourself whether or not you could handle it. But this is the cutoff wheel that I use. It's a metal type of cutoff wheel. This is all aluminum, so it cuts through very quickly and very easily. What I used it is I use it on the low setting, so it's not going to cut very fast. It's just going to cut, you know, nice and evenly and slow, and it's a lot more controllable. When you get them up into the higher RPMs, this starts, if it catches, it'll jump, and then you'll start scratching up everything because it jumps. So start on a low setting, make yourself a nice line. So what I did is I took and I just kind of went across this area just like that, just nice, gave it a nice mark, and I just went down to wherever the line was on this that I drew. So I cut across like that, and then I came in and I cut those other two marks. to where I would remove this entire section right here. All this would just come right off. There's pictures of it on our Facebook page also of the process and some of the pieces that I've cut off from these other two rails. If you want to check those out, it might be of some help also. So when you're done with it, you basically should have removed all of this material here. From here forward to this section here. All of that is now gone, and you have a nice flat surface between here and your rail, where your next rail segment's going to go. So then all you need is just a regular piece of rail segment. This is also another part that you want to make sure you get right. This rail segment is thicker than the area that we've removed. If I can get, let's see if we can get this to where it shows right. But you can see here that this rail sits higher than this level that I just cut off. So what you have to do is you have to get this bottom of the rail thinned out enough to where it sits perfectly flush with this rail, or not, or just a little less, as long as it's not higher than this rail, or else your sight is going to be up higher. Even a little lower is fine, because you'll see why later on. But you just want to make sure that this rail, whatever rail segment you're going to be using, is the same height as this rail or a little lower than the rail when you put it onto this part of the gun. Okay, so for me, what I had to do is I had to cut off a little bit of ours. You could do it again if you're really good with a Dremel. You could kind of make your cut and slowly guide it down to make your cuts, or you could use like a flat file, laying the file flat. This one will remove a lot of material fast, and then I would just take a level and I just slowly worked it till I got it down to the right height that I wanted. Also using your Dremel to cut off however many slots that you need. So I kind of measured how much I need, and then I cut off the slots. So let's say I only needed like this many slots. I would just cut behind this one and then cut right here. So basically, I cut like right there, and then I cut another one here. Or if you want to leave some space, you could cut on this side of it, because we're going to need a gap between this spot where we just cut earlier and then where the next segment, next rise segment would be. So you could leave yourself like that space, and it'll save you some time trying to space stuff out. But that's how I did it. Alright, so then I cut that section down, smooth it down so it's ready. Once that was done, now comes the part where you want to get everything lined up and JB Weld it. But before you do it, the JB Weld will only stick if you have if you have like accessible area. So what I did is I took another Dremel tool, this cone shaped piece here, and I put it in my Dremel, and all of this, you can't see it right now, but when you cut out that early other material, there's going to be like a kind of a hole here left. What I did with this is I took and I just scraped up the inside of this to get all the paint off. So that way when I put my JB Weld in, there's area for it to hold inside and area for it to hold on the outside. That way everything stays in place and is really solid. Alright, so once you have Dremeled all this area off and you now have blank metal in there, now you're ready to do the whole JB welding of the pieces. The easiest way for me to line them up was to take the JB Weld and mix it up first. So I took the JB Weld, mixed it up onto a piece of cardboard or whatever, and I let it not set up, but I let it slightly start to harden. Because when you mix these up, initially it's going to be like a more of like a runnier type of putty. But if you let it sit for like, I found like 15 minutes or so, maybe not even that long, just kind of play with it with like your tool or your scrape, let it get a little harder, more Play-Doh like. It made it a lot easier to attach it. So I laid my rail segment down onto here, and you can see I spaced it out the same distance that it would need to be for this segment to this segment, so that there's that space there. So I'm going to actually attach something to the spot, and I laid it in there. And then using anything that you know is straight, you could line up these two pieces like that, applying the putty, and really I just crammed it into everything. So when this was laying here, the putty was actually over all of these rail segments and just like a big glob. is what it looked like. It looked like a huge glob of putty that was all here, and also putty on the inside in here. So it's just this massive glob of putty, and then more putty actually being on this side than what I had put inside, like on top here. And then all I did was I set it down upside down onto a piece of wax paper and made sure to realign everything, make sure that those rail segments were lined up perfect using like some type of file or straight object. I think I actually used pencils. I just took 2 pencils, matched up the lines here, and kind of pushed against it like that to make sure that they were flat, and I let it sit for overnight, the next day, most of the next day. I think the thing says 24 hours. However long it says to sit, that's how long you want to let it sit. You really want to let it harden. Once it's hardened, you can turn it over, and now you just need to uncover everything that you have puttied onto there. So what I used for that was I used this Dremel piece. This is just another type of sanding bit or grinding bit that's got a flat edge, and you can see that the edge, its thickness is pretty close to that of this rail segment here, the space. So what I did is I just started slowly grinding it down to where I found these edges and ground down, and then would look and say, okay, so like I ground down, and then I would look and see how close that level was to this level of this part of the rail. And then I'd move to the next section, do the same thing. When it came down to this part, I'd do the same thing. I just hold the rail, take my Dremel tool, and I'd slowly chip it away to where I made sure I was in the same level as this part of the rail until I flattened it all out. And you can see there's kind of like a little angle to this rail segment, or to this upper. And so I would kind of just slowly grind down to where I found that angle and then would stop there. That way I didn't mess up any of the angle of the upper receiver. You can kind of see the angle there a little bit. So that way it's just a straight line. And I do the same thing on this side. Inside, there wasn't really much to do because even though it's a putty, gravity still pulls it down and it flattens it out really nice into that rail. Also, there's really no reason that you have to grind this completely down. Your barrel, when it's in there, is going to cover that up, and the charging handle never goes that far forward. So it's not going to interfere with anything, even if you have like a little bit still mounted up there. Not a lot, but you still have some. Once that's done and you've ground everything off, you can see your rails, everything looks really nice. You've ground it down, and you know, just go slow with it. That's the big thing. Then you're just ready to paint, and you just paint it whatever color you want. We did more of like a snake pattern with these 2 upper receivers. One is a black background and then snake, and the other one's a tan, obviously, with the snake pattern. And interesting enough, both have the same color green. It's just the green turned out differently with the gray, with the black background, and one with the tan. So just kind of interesting thing there. But you can see on this one, here's like my mound inside. You can see there's kind of like a little drop that's still there. It doesn't interfere with anything, so it doesn't really matter. You could grind that down if you're really OCD about it, but no one sees that inside. Alright. The biggest thing to do is just to go slow. Make sure as you're grinding, you're slowly grinding off material that you need to, and then, you know, grind just a little bit, look at it, feel it, wipe off the dust from the material there, the JB Weld, so you really see what's going on there. And just take your time. Don't rush through the process, because you'll make mistakes, and then once you mess up the upper receiver, you know, it may not ever turn out looking very nice at all. Make sure everything's lined up straight. I can't say that enough. I spent a lot of time making sure everything is straight, everything is flush as possibly could be. You know, this is hand tools, you know, so there's a little bit of variability. Not everything is perfectly straight, but as straight as I could get it. And they came out really nice. And we get compliments everywhere we go about them and how did we do it. So this is our little mod, and a lot of people wanted to kind of know how to do it, and that's what we did. It takes a lot of time, but when it's done, it looks really nice, and it looks a lot more like the real Remington or the Bushmaster ACR. So, alright, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask on our YouTube page, or hit us up on Facebook at Deranged Airsoft. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys out there in the field.